So I'm Kim Miller. I'm the program director for Ignatian Solidarity Network. On behalf of ISN, thank you all for being part of this. This is one of the first ways that we like to kick off the Ignatian Family Teaching for Justice, considering that we'll be sending 1,500 people to Capitol Hill on Monday, November 5th. This is one of the most exciting parts of the gathering for all of us, and especially being able to help you all prepare your delegations to have successful advocacy visits. So today I'm excited to have Meg Olson from Network Catholic Social Justice Lobby here with us. She's a pro at this and can give you some of the good tips and tools to help ensure that your meeting goes smoothly, but also that you feel prepared as you go into your meeting. The number one thing that we hear from delegations is when they prepare ahead of time, they walk into their offices feeling that much more confident, and it really helps to ensure a successful day on the Hill. So thank you for taking the first step to learn some more about Advocacy 101, and thank you to Meg for being with us. One more quick note, you all are muted as you've entered the webinar today, but if you have a question, you can use the chat box function to type that in. We'll also end with about 15 minutes of Q&A time where you'll have the opportunity to ask questions to Meg directly. So thank you all, and I'll let Meg take it away.
Great, thanks, Kim. Network is really glad to be a member of the Ignatian Solidarity Network, and we are really excited to be at the teach-in this year once again for workshops and tabling and and networking and all sorts of opportunities. So as Kim said, I manage our grassroots mobilization team here at Network, and we do a lot of lobby trainings for high school students and college students, and of course all of our adult members and parish and people at parishes and all sorts of things. So just a bit about Network. We are a social justice advocacy and federal lobby. We were founded by Catholic sisters in 1971 from a variety of communities. And we have over 100,000 members and supporters across the country, almost in every congressional district. And we say that we educate, organize, and lobby for economic and social transformation. So today in this webinar, we're going to be talking about, I'll be giving you kind of a broader overview of advocacy and explain how lobbying fits into that advocacy piece. And then we'll be talking about your lobby visit at IFTJ, kind of what will happen when you walk into that office to what you do when you return home. And as Kim said, you feel free to type messages in your chat box, and then there'll also be about 15 minutes at the end for questions. So just a basic definition of advocacy first. As advocates, we are going to be promoting and championing policies that benefit certain members of our population, of our human family. The policies that IFTJ has chosen for us this year are criminal justice and migration. So we'll definitely be going in as advocates for our immigrant sisters and brothers and from the refugee community as well as returning citizens and what is going to benefit them. And we are certainly taking action, right? Going to the Hill, preparing for your lobby visit, just attending the teach-in itself are strong actions that we are taking to influence our political system to benefit the common good. And this final definition from Network, your students and the participants in these lobby visits will be speaking very powerfully that day. And again, on behalf to their members of Congress to create change so that the lives of our immigrant and refugee sisters and brothers and returning citizens are more just and fair. Of course, as part of the Ignatian Solidarity Network, we definitely consider this faith-based advocacy. And I can't emphasize this enough. I know that you receive a lot of materials to prep your lobby visit, and there'll be opportunities over IFTJ to delve more deeply into the topics. But at the end of the day, the credibility that these 1,500 most, young people and students and yourselves as teachers bring to the Hill is that moral message and also the personal stories from your community. While facts and figures are good, that's not why we're bringing up your voice to the Hill. And we'll talk a little bit more about constituent power in a bit, but certainly just a story from a constituent is the best way that you are going to connect with your member of Congress or their staffer that day. It's important, and we say this at Network especially, in our sister spirit, is to remember that even legislators who don't agree with us and who don't necessarily share our values or see eye to eye with us on what is just immigration reform or just criminal justice reform, that we remember that they are all children of God. And that definitely leads to a different conversation. One of the reasons, I think that this, remembering this is what allows both the Jesuits and Network to be able to go into offices on both sides of the aisle and be taken seriously and be respected. I do believe that there will be a public action before the lobby visit, and but also, so that is certainly, or if students want to pray or just reflect before their actual lobby visit in a small group, that is great. And it's also important on this day, especially the day before our midterm elections, to remind everyone that we are just one part of this long haul for advocacy. And it's going to take years. A lot of us, I know many of us have been coming to the teach-in for many years, and we've been working on immigration reform, especially for a very long time. So it's important to have that perspective. So as I said earlier, networks, the way that we see advocacy is to educate, organize, and lobby. And so today, of course, we're going to be focusing on the lobby visit, but it's still important to think about this as an opportunity to educate our lawmakers. Sometimes, if the lawmaker themselves doesn't have an active role on the Judiciary Committee or a committee that deals with migration or criminal justice, that might not be their main focus. Or even if they know about some of the issues that are happening on the Hill, the staffers in the office might not know exactly what is happening in your district and in your own backyards. So this is definitely a conversation to educate our offices about your lived realities. So as I said, you'll be educating, but hopefully also influencing your elected officials. Hopefully your students are in the process of doing some research, of prepping based on the materials that Kim has sent out, gathering information, thinking about stories that they can share when they're up on the Hill, carrying that message. There are a lot of different ways to influence members of Congress, and some of this is things that maybe you've engaged in before coming to the Hill, or perhaps you'll engage when you go back home. Just a little pro tip, sometimes, it'd be great for a student to write a letter to the editor after they've returned home from IFTJ, saying, we met with Senator so-and-so, and this is what we heard. But of course, today we are focusing on Capitol Hill visits. So just a little bit of sharing on why this is so important. The chart that you're looking at here comes from the Congressional Management Foundation, which is a nonpartisan research on congressional staff. They survey congressional staff every other year on both sides of the aisle with questions of all sorts of questions dealing with the best way to communicate with both with the members of Congress and the staff themselves. So this first chart, as you can see, the most influential way to communicate with a member of Congress is with an in-person issue visit from the constituents, right? nearly 50% said that this has a lot of positive influence, and 94% said that it has at least some positive influence. So this is a really powerful moment for your students and for your group. And so just to remind them of that. And even if it is with a staffer, as we said, Monday is the day before the election. So a lot of the members are going to be out canvassing either for themselves or their friends, and stumping for them. The staffers are the ones that often have like the most information about an issue. And it is definitely staffers that even we here at Network build, like having those relationships with the staffers is very, very important. This next chart from the Congressional Management Foundation just talks about the importance of citizen advocates, right? They can be, the students and the school groups that walk into these rooms can be extremely influential and can contribute to better policy. But you definitely need personalized and local information. So if there's an opportunity as you're prepping for your visit on November 5th to do some research about the impact legislation would have on a district or on your state, this says that 91% of members of Congress want to hear this and find this helpful, and staffers, and only 9% of constituents when they come to the Hill have this. So I can't stress enough how important it is to have some of that local information and do some prepping. For instance, like on talking about migration, like how many young people are DACA recipients? How many, if you live in an area with a lot of refugees or people who have asylum seekers or temporary protected status. So getting those numbers is really important. The second thing is looking at this, having a specific ask. Luckily the materials you have from IFTJ outlines asks, so making sure that as you're preparing for your visit, that everyone can articulate them clearly and with confidence. And definitely, as we see down here, personal stories are very important as well. Just a word about faith. The participants in the lobby visit certainly should not shy away from faith. It should definitely be an underlying strength for why we are coming up to the Hill, to be prophetic. And we know, of course, the students who come to IFTJ are not necessarily all Catholic, and that's all right. And they may not have any faith at all, and that's all right too. It's at the end of the day, again, as grassroots, we are speaking from a moral center, and it's important to be authentic. It's also just a good pro tip as you're researching your member of Congress. It's pretty easy to figure out what faith they are, and of course, we have lots of Catholic members up on the Hill. So knowing that is also a good starting point. And definitely preparing those stories, right? Again, the participants on these lobby days have one of their strongest attributes and just contributions to this visit is that you can share about what is happening in your own community and possibly even at your own school, especially if we're talking about DACA recipients. When you're talking to a staffer, oftentimes the staffer might not be from the representative's district. Like they might be, for example, from Massachusetts, but they might not be from like Jim McGovern's district itself. So they might not be familiar with some of the local, like the immigration rep center or the program that might be in place at a church to provide returning citizens with IDs or anything like that. So you will provide those perspectives to the staffer. And also at the end of the day, if you facts and figures are very important, and it's very important to have that data, but they could question where that data is coming from. What they can't question is if, you have college students who are involved in prison ministry and can share those stories. They're not going to say, oh, you're lying, or that's fake news. I think it's also important to remind the students who are going to these lobby visits not to be intimidated, especially if the lobby group are college students. Many of those staffers are only going to be a year or two older than them. They are definitely issue experts, but they should not be seen as fearful. And no one should be afraid to talk to any staffer or even their own member of Congress. They work for us, and that's really important to remember. And if we do have questions from the staffer that express opposing viewpoints, it's all right. It's also all right to say, I don't know, if they ask a question. That's actually an opportunity to follow up with them and provide them with more information. And of course, being the day before the election in this era, I know some of our young people are going to think, why are we even bothering? And so it's really important to lay that groundwork for them. And I think all weekend at IFTJ, they'll hear words of encouragement, letting them know, right, we are called to this moment to be advocates for our sisters and brothers and for ourselves. So, walking into the lobby visit, IFTJ has already decided on the specific issues that you'll be talking about. You'll be talking about migration policy and criminal justice policy. And I know that there are extensive leave behinds on both of those. Definitely do a little bit of research on both of those. As I said earlier, getting some local data will be helpful. I would encourage you, especially if you're just looking for where to start, perhaps the Jesuits, or even here at Network, our lobbyists can connect you with resources. Definitely research your member of Congress. This doesn't take a long dive. You can just go to their webpage and read their bio to find out about, what faith they are, certainly, what committees they serve on, have they supported legislation that's, have they supported many of the DACA bills we saw earlier, or have they voted for increasing funding for detention centers, all these different things. You'll have time that Sunday night before the lobby visit to divide up what each person is going to say, and you'll have a lobby visit planning sheet. IFTJ has already prepared the leave behinds, and those will all be in folders that you will receive. And you'll also have time that Sunday evening to practice your talking points and prepare for the conversation. So when you arrive, you definitely, I know sometimes there's different schools that are all going to the same lobby visit. So just make sure you all meet up about 10 minutes before the scheduled meeting. And it would be helpful probably to have your lobby visit planning sheet, at least one person having a copy, so everyone knows what everyone's roles are. We want this to go, especially the introduction and everything, to go smoothly. Have everyone silence their phones, especially because it's the day before the election. We might see staffers responding to texts or something, which I know, feels rude, but it is a reality. But we will definitely not be on our phones. You'll have one member of your group go up to the front desk and introduce the group and sign in. When that person is introducing at the front desk, they'll say, this is our school. We're from St. Joe's University. We're here for the Ignatian Family Teach-In. We're meeting with Miss, put in the staffer's name at this time. Oftentimes at the front desk, they want everyone to sign in. And this is, of course, for them to build their own mailing lists, and also to keep track of who's in their office. Everyone who signs in should use the address where they're registered to vote, whether they're a constituent or not. And of course, if they're high school students and not eligible to vote yet, their home address is probably the address of where their parents are voting. At the start of the meeting, when you sit down and meet the staffer, ask how much time you have. Typically a meeting on the Hill is going to go about 30 minutes. Some of these offices are really small, so you might be out in the hallway or a stairwell. That is okay. Don't feel like they're blowing you off. They actually want to make sure that your groups can be accommodated to the space. We had at the Catholic Social Ministry Gathering this last year, we had a wonderful 40-minute long meeting where we were all sitting in a stairwell with Senator Gillibrand's staff. And it was just because they don't have a lot of room for the group, for the size of our delegation. So in the lobby visit, everyone will introduce themselves briefly, say where they're from, what school they're attending, and if they are a constituent, they should definitely let the staff member know. You definitely want to start off the meeting saying something positive about the member. If they are a member, like I'm just thinking like Representative Jayapal in Seattle has done amazing work trying to close detention centers and defund detention centers. So thank them if they have worked on issues that we care about. And if there's someone that we don't necessarily share values with around returning citizens and migration, then you can just thank them for their service. Definitely introduce the issues you are lobbying on, and you could have one person introduce one issue and one person introduce a second issue. And then have people have someone share a personal story and make the policy ask. So, if you have, for example, someone who, a student who can talk about the DACA population, or they might even be a DACA recipient themselves. And so this is important to me. Congress, will you support a pathway to citizenship for DACA recipients, whatever the ask is. And this is the time after you make the ask to allow the staffer to share the members' positions on things. And it's all right if they're using a lot of jargon or not exactly being clear. It's all right to take a beat and ask for more information and curiosity. Right? At Network, we say practice holy curiosity. If you hear a speaker, the staffer, raising concerns about the issue, you can gently respond to those concerns. At the end of the meeting, you definitely want to repeat your asks, and you want to share your leave behind documents with them. And a note about this is also in your thank you, you also want to send the documents electronically if you can. It's nice, it's great for them to have a piece of paper on file, but then thinking about it as an electronic file as well. When you're closing your meeting, you want to be sure to ask, how can we better support the member of Congress? Back in your hometown, and this is thinking about how you can follow up. Back when you go back home, for example, if your students are all volunteering at an immigration center, could they help organize a site visit from the member of Congress or from district staff? When will the member next be in town? Is there going to be a town hall? Is there something else we can participate in? Can we go on an in-district visit? So keep thinking. Definitely get business cards to follow up, even if it's a thank you or if you said you would be able to provide more information. This is hopefully just the start of you building the relationship with the member of Congress and their office, and we definitely want to keep this going. So a little bit about tone. I don't think anyone's going to be antagonistic, but I know sometimes some staffers are not the most tactful, and they might say something that could be very hurtful depending on who's in the room. So make sure that everyone is polite, but definitely speaks with confidence when they're explaining their positions on how they feel about migration, on the proposed solutions, on criminal justice reform. Encourage the participants to ask questions. Again, the members of Congress work for us, and so it's okay to find out more about why they feel a certain way or why they have voted a certain way. This is also really important, especially because we know, we're not expecting you to go in as policy experts and have all the wonky details. It is perfectly fine to say, I don't know, to a question, and then say, I will get back to you. And that's when, when you get the business card at the end, that's an opportunity to write back with that information. You definitely want to make sure the asks are clear and concise. So, there's different bullet points and asks outlined for you on those sheets. Make sure that everyone practices them and knows, exactly what they're saying. We definitely don't want to stumble over those. At the end of the meeting, definitely thank the staffer, or maybe perhaps if the member's there, for their time. And then this is, staffers love to take pictures, and members of Congress certainly do as well. But so ask if you can take a picture with the staffer. Typically you'd want to do it like outside the office by the plaque, and then share it on social media. We want to make sure that IFTJ is making some noise up in the Twitter sphere. So I know we'll have hashtags for the event. Definitely debrief with your group, and then there'll be some guideline questions on your lobby prep sheet for debriefing. About, what did you hear from this staffer is really important. How are they feeling about funding for ICE in the federal budget, or whatever issues that you end up talking about under the great umbrella of migration policy. And then evaluate yourselves. How did we do as a group? You probably have another lobby visit that day, so what could we do in the next meeting just to make sure that things go more smoothly? Then please assign somebody to send a thank you email on behalf of the whole group. In the thank you, you can repeat the ask. In fact, it's very good to repeat the ask in the email, and then to include all the leave behind documents that IFTJ provides. And then when you get back home, continue to watch your member of Congress and hold them accountable. If the staffer says that they, anticipate that they're going to sign on to a bill and become a co-sponsor, it's easy to check that out on the house.gov or different, on the websites for the House and Senate. And you also definitely want to report back to ISN about what you hear. Your lobby day is, it's a great experience for everyone, and to be, understand how things work on the Hill, and to practice, advocacy, but it's also the advocacy that you're doing is part of a larger coalition and a larger movement. And so it's important that everybody hears what happens, because we're all in this together and we're all working on these issues. So I think that's all I have. So now we have time for Q&A.
Thank you, Meg. We are into the Q&A time. All of you are on mute right now, so if you would like to ask a question, go ahead and click the microphone icon, and that will take you off of mute. Or if you're on a cell phone, go ahead and take yourself off of mute to ask a question. If you're not able to use your microphone, you can also ask a question via the chat function. Just type your question into the chat box and we'll relay it to Meg. Are there any questions before we break? All right, well, as I noted, this is being recorded right now and will be sent to all of you, as well as a copy of Meg's great PowerPoint with all those tips and some very helpful charts, I think, in helping your students and colleagues and fellow parishioners understand the importance of advocacy visits and how this is part of the larger process. So those will be to you within the next couple of days. Also being sent out this week is a advocacy preparation toolkit. It will contain this PowerPoint in it, but also some reflection questions, some ways to think about, make suggestion of relating the talking points to the local issues, as well as a few more resources to help you feel as prepared as you can be for your advocacy day. So if you have any questions between now and the teach-in, please do reach out to me. My name is Kim Miller. I'm the program director at the Ignatian Solidarity Network. And I'm sure you've received plenty of emails from me, so you know my email address. But if you haven't, it's kmiller@ignatiansolidarity.net. And I am happy to answer any of your advocacy questions or to connect you with the professional advocates that we work with throughout the year. So to all of you, thank you. I'm very excited for the work that you'll be doing over the next month in preparing your delegations, but also for November 5th, when we'll be a few of the 1,500 folks that will be headed to the Hill that day. So good luck to all of you in your preparation. Thank you to Meg and Network, and we'll see you in November. Thanks.
Great, thanks.